Good morning. My name is Kirsty Dignam. I had to check that everything was actually recording then, that everything that was being shared could be seen. My name is Kirsty Dignam, and I'm here to look at the energies this week with today's Monday's Musings on the 8th of June. And I really felt myself taking a deep breath then, taking a deep breath for the week ahead, really getting clear on where we are. There is an invitation to simplify things, but that simplification can only come from looking at where we have been overcomplicating certain areas of our life. Before I do any of these videos, I ensure that from previous experience, I ensure that I am being heard, that the microphone is working. This morning that really stood out. Making sure we're being heard and where we're being heard from, when we're being heard from. There are a lot of situations that have the potential to come to completion from now until the end of June, I would say. Now, whilst they are welcome, there is an expectation collectively of how that will occur that is, stopping that, preventing that. Release cannot come from our own view of how it should be. In its very nature, that is part of it. Part of the letting go is to let go of everything that we perceive about the situation also, including how we think it should be released. One of the hardest things, I experience a lot of autoimmune situations in my life, a lot of physical situations in my life, and one of the hardest things to do, possibly ongoing actually at times, is to accept where my body is at, to accept where a situation is at. But nothing changes until that happens. Now, that doesn't mean by accepting it will change either, and we need to get our head out of that. We need to get our belief out of the if I just agree with this, because acceptance isn't agreement. If I just agree with this or see it for what it is or take on board the wisdom that is being shared, it will change. That in its very self and the very notion of it isn't acceptance, because underneath it all there's still the belief that it will change or that it needs to change. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of what is going on the collective or the individual, because it is just that, individual. It's very easy for me to sit here and say, accept this, 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 and, someone else in that actual situation could be like, I can't. Okay. That's okay too. But to keep doing something, expecting a change that potentially will never happen, is slowing down any transition of the situation. There's a big difference between transition, completion, and change. We were shown that last year, that a lot of the things that were happening in the 9-year were all about integration. This year there is the promise of things shifting from the level of integration that we allow. It's not even about acceptance anymore, because let's face it, there are things that we cannot. Individually and collectively, there are things that we will be continually working with beyond the physical, beyond the life we find ourselves in, beyond the experiences that we have had. An example, my beloved mother, our relationship has continued to grow even though she isn't here physically, because some of the restrictions in our relationship are no more. The limitations to what it can be has expanded. There is always a time, there is always a place where these things can come to the divine conclusion that they are, and it may not be where we would like that to be. It may not be in this moment. It may not be in this lifetime. It may not be in our perceived reality of it. The emphasis this week is to ensure that you are being seen first and foremost by yourself. Ensure that you are being heard first and foremost by yourself, and from where or when that is occurring. Is there anything else on that? Well, my kittens at the moment, it's raining outside and they don't want to go outside because it's raining, but they don't want me to shut the door either. There is an emphasis here of crossing the threshold. And there's emotions there. There is emotions there. There is the reality that that is inevitable. There is the reality that change is a constant. There is the reality that I hear time is running out. Of course, time isn't linear, you know, and Einstein said that time was relative. It's what we do with it in the moment that gives time its power and its essence. But there is a sensation of trying to fit everything in one moment. Now, whilst that is possible, it is only possible through presence. It is only possible through having the option to go outside when it's raining, to not shut the door on that, but also not to push it either. To be with the inconvenience of the metaphorical wet carpet with the door open, or to find an alternative and open the window with my kittens, but they're not ready to jump through the window yet. But to be with the inconvenience of having the choice. Freedom of choice is a very powerful thing, a very beautiful thing that we all long for. When we are given it, sometimes it can be really quite uncomfortable. Particularly when realizing when we decide an action, we are releasing another one. And this is the bigger question here. How willing are we to cross that threshold? How willing are we to say, this is how things are? This is how a person may be. This is how my health may be. This is how, in this moment, this current situation may be. How willing are we to cross that threshold from within? What are we going to choose to carry over that also? I had the most beautiful invitation this weekend to be a guest healer at some retreats, and honoured, absolutely honoured on the one hand. On the other hand, I've always had this vision of being at retreats, healing and teaching, and this very human assumption that it was my retreats that has actually stood in the way, that has actually prevented me from materializing this vision, this very blinkered way of being. Will I have my own retreats? Maybe, maybe not, who knows, we shall see. But the emphasis here this week in particular is to remember underneath it all what we're trying to achieve in a situation. Are we going for love in a relationship? How willing are we to let go of what we think that should be in order to truly experience it for what it is? Are we striving towards the dream job, the dream career? How willing are we to expand on how that may come about? It's not that these things aren't possible. It is our own perspective of how they occur that is restricting their potential. And when they will occur. There's time. There's always time. Physically, one of our biggest gifts is our mortality. Also, one of our biggest curses is our mortality, because it can either help us really appreciate where we are and what we have, or feel as if that isn't enough and we want to get in more, which takes us out of the current situation. The guidance this week, again, is to keep coming back to our body, which is difficult. Very, very difficult when there are a lot of wounds rising to the surface to be felt and heard that are going to increase. I think it's Chiron in Taurus. Please don't quote me on that, but I know Chiron is doing something in the next few weeks, I think it is Taurus because it's body related and worth. So yeah, that would make sense. Whatever the environment around us is doing, whether that's our physical home, whether that's the earth, whether that's the stars, whether that's what's going on the global scale, whatever is going on around us is impacting our body. The biggest question here is to look at our own wounds in regards to worth, our own wounds in regards to belonging, our own wounds in regards to security, and yes, thank you, the mother wound. Now, the mother wound, I don't mean just the physical mother, although of course that is where we, on a human level, start to really relate to that connection. I mean the connection we have with the earth. I mean the connection we have with our bodies. I mean the connection we have with creativity. I mean the connection we have with intuition, with nurture, with support of ourselves and others. We can really, really, really want the best for a situation or a person or an outcome. But remember, that is our view of what is best. And that is difficult. It is difficult to acknowledge that we all have different views, particularly those that we are trying to support or help. We all have our own process. An example, my husband has this, I would say, very almost quite aggressive mental process that he goes through when he creates something that is so not for me and at times looks very uncomfortable for him, but it's his process, and he knows his process, and he knows where he is in his process, and he works his way through that process. The best way for me to support him in that is to remain in my process, hold space for myself, so that he can then get on with his own process. And that is hard. That's not to say that we are all separate from each other, but like atoms that move together, when we're in our own energy, the impact that we have on another doesn't change them to be like us. It helps them to change and evolve to continue being like their self. The biggest question is, how do we feel about that version of them? How do we feel about that version of ourselves? What do we need in order to be accepting of that? Even the word acceptance can bring up a lot, right? And that's the thing, there's going to be a lot rising. We had the 6/6 portal over the weekend, D-Day. I didn't really see much about it in the news. I didn't really see much about it on the TV, or, you know, it's like, I guess not the buzzword at the moment. It's when it suits. Yeah, you know, you can go some years where D-Day is such a big thing, and there's a lot of remembrance, and then other times where nothing, just nothing. Hold on a moment, let me just pause this. Interesting. So I paused the video to double check, to take a second look, to stop and be with the information that I was sharing and make sure that it was accurate first, to confirm my intuition that it actually was D-Day at the weekend, because there wasn't anything. I literally didn't see anything about the I think it's like the 82nd year or something, and what was once so almost in our face, yeah, I just literally saw nothing about it. Well, it was D-Day at the weekend, of course it was the 6th of June. So really looking at where change is victory, peace, just because it isn't this big song and dance, just because it isn't obvious, doesn't mean that it isn't there. Do we need just the big shifts? Are we willing to notice the small changes in between? Back to the example of the retreats and being a guest healer there, that is a step towards the bigger vision. Don't get so caught up in the outcome that you want that you forget how vital it is to be in the process of creating it. There is going to be a lot coming up over the next few weeks. As I say, I think we've got a new moon, this weekend. It must be in Gemini because we're in Gemini in the sun, so it must be in Gemini, the new moon. We do then have Chiron, I'm pretty sure, going into Taurus, and we have the solstice, right? So all balance, communication, reflection, projection, without looking into it at the moment, coming back to worth and security in who we are. The more secure we are in who we are as a person, the less we want to change people. The more we can appreciate that that's how they discover who they are. The more we can be with whatever is rising in us as a result of them being who they are. Anything else to add on that? I think we can carry on looking and looking and looking for examples this week. The guidance this morning was to keep coming back to the heart. One of the things that happens when old wounds rise, or even new wounds, I was going to say runes, even new, and it is a new language trying to come in regarding situations that we find ourselves in. But one of the things that can happen when these pains arise, when these experiences arise, is we go into trauma response. We go into our head. We don't want to be in the energy that was hurt however long ago as a result. So we go into our head. The invitation this week is that's not going to sustain us because the heart needs to be open. So we come back into the heart. Why does the heart need to be open? Because when these experiences rise with an open heart, they can be held in that space. Light, love, forgiveness, compassion, mercy, acceptance, whatever name you want to give it. Joy, laughter, whatever name you want to give. Even, the fear that we are running out of time. If we really, really dig deep into that, what actually is that? What is the fear of our own mortality, if not the yearning to live under a different guise, in a different suit? What is the frustration that we're feeling, if not the yearning to have those that we love be at comfort or peace, have situations be of ease, have our work reflect who we are? Really feel into the emotions of it. Thank you. Now I see where we're going. Today is World Ocean Day, and something that has been rising for me personally over the last few days that I've sat with, because I'm a big fan of evolving technology. I'm not going to get into the views behind AI. It's too in-depth for one person's understanding, and it would purely be my own opinion. Even connected to it and guides its unfolding, unwinding, that's why I'm going to use these cards, the unfolding path before us that is inevitable based on where we are and what we do with it. We are being shown, thank you, the responsibility of being a creator of technology so advanced that we are going to have to up our game with it. We are going to have to up our game in our own awareness. Now, speaking of which, awareness, I think I'm nearly running out of time for the Instagram video. So if that does happen after 20 minutes, the rest of this video will be on YouTube. The full video for free, not my restrictions, I'm afraid. So yes, we are being shown what it is to be a creator in a very physical, reflective, mirror-like technology. The awareness for me at the moment that appears to be lacking is what that demands of the earth to use. I do not know the whole statistics, but I do know that the amount of water that is used for data centers to run AI is significant. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm not saying do use it. I'm just saying be aware and moderate your use of something that takes from the earth, that takes from water, that takes from what we need to survive as a species, particularly on World Ocean Day. Maybe have a day where you don't use AI. Oh my gosh. Maybe have a day where we conserve some emotional, elemental wisdom here, you know, creating ourselves. Look, I love AI. I have an incredible deck that was made by AI. I think it has wonderful, wonderful potential based on us and how we choose to use it. But we do need the awareness of the cost of that. Anything that we create, there's a cost. Not in a whoa negative way, but in a relationship. We are in relationship with everything. So maybe on World Ocean Day, take a day off from anything that is using more water than it needs to. Whether that's AI, whether that's our emotions going over the same thing. Maybe just take a step back and allow things to settle. Over the weekend, I'm seeing the analogy, of course, yes, of a bucket of water. Things have been shook up, really, really shook up on the top, and all the sludge has come to the surface. Let it settle. Sift out the obvious. You know, if you're feeling tired, then rest. If you're feeling that you need some space, then give yourself that. If you're feeling that you need to bring in different energies into your body based on the things that you're watching or eating or whatever, you know, give yourself that and then allow things to integrate and to settle. Anything else that needs to be shared? Leave the door open. You know, it's not raining out there now. Leave the door open if you can. What's a little bit of wet floor? Leave the door open. Be open to the potential that the relationships we find ourselves in, the opportunities we find ourselves in, and yes, they are opportunities. They may not feel like it. Financially, in my home at the moment, we are being given an opportunity to possibly do different types of work, to balance where we're at. Yeah, that's real. That's real life. That's how things are, whether we like it or not. Something can be detrimental or it can be an opportunity. I see the Olympic torch. I see the opportunity, lots of opportunity, the invitation to run with the baton with whatever we're given this week. The year of the magician. Now, alchemy comes from transformation. It comes from taking a situation, not making it what it's not. Okay, that's not change. That's not change. That's not alchemy. That's quite a very dark authoritarian way of seeing magic, actually, to make something as you want it to be. And we have kind of got caught in that, in the law of attraction, in the manifestation, in the it has to be my way or the highway. I'm just as guilty. We really lose out on the creative process when we're that structured. Okay, and it's quite a shadow aspect of magic. It's not about changing something from what it is, but helping it to evolve to be what it could be. Run with it. That, you know, like myself, that invitation to possibly look into other work as a result of needing more finances could take me somewhere I never even had planned. When I became a midwife, it wasn't by choice. Yeah, it wasn't by conscious choice. I didn't get into being a paediatric nurse. I was too young. I'd left the application too late. And yeah, it was all my own doing. So I had a choice with the UCAS book in front of me and I didn't know what else I wanted. So I closed my eyes and ended up picking midwifery. I took the rejection and I ran with it. And it was the best thing I ever did. I never chose to read tarot cards. I never chose consciously to be a quote-unquote spiritual person. I took the falling apart of my own health and the lack of knowledge in the medical arena to help me with that. And what I discovered, I ran with it. And now I wouldn't change it. So whatever is coming up for you may not feel as if it's the perfect thing based on your expectation of what perfection is. Leave the door open. Let things unfold. See where they could take you. Relationships may not be what we want them to be, but they could be something really incredible if we just let go of that. Our work may not be what we thought it would be, but it could be something incredible if we let go of that. That's the invitation this week. Doesn't have to be a big song and dance. Doesn't have to be a big shift. This is about worth, and worth doesn't come from repeating things that make you feel less than worthy. Okay, so I can guarantee that you won't be listening to this on Instagram now because there's only 20 minutes. And I'm not going to edit the video and cut out the good bits just to do a smaller video, because that's me defining what is good. So you are now on YouTube. If you've been here all along, thank you very much for staying. If you've come over from Instagram, over to the dark side from Instagram, thank you. And please subscribe. Please push a like button. It kind of gets the message out there, but also you will get notified when any new videos are up. Although they're every Monday, heads up. Okay, energies this week and how to best navigate them. And that's the beauty, isn't it, of patterns. They can be really predictable. Really, really predictable. Like I say, I'm here every Monday. It's called Monday's Musings. Clues in the title, right? But it can be really predictable, but that can be powerful when we know what's coming. That gives us an opportunity, like this video, to pause, to check the information is correct, to see what we're sharing and where we're sharing it from. Nine of Pentacles underneath. Yeah, there can be great abundance in acknowledging what has grown, what is around us, what beauty there is, rather than focusing on what there isn't. Okay. And there's a well, yeah, it is a fear. I hear apples fall from the same tree, or doesn't fall far from the tree. No, not at all. We're all different individual characters. However, stubbornness, expectation, priorities, how we view them, how we hold on to them, how we allow them to dictate our lives. Yeah, we may not all want the same thing, but the way that we go after it could be pretty similar this week. Okay, yeah, okay, I see where we're going. So in the last video, I think it was the last video or the video before, there was something about competition. Yes, it was last week. There was something about competition, the shadow aspect of the fire horse that's coming through. Competition, comparison, trying to get our way in a situation that isn't just about us. Being aware of that this week, being aware of, again, staying in our lane. It doesn't mean we can't dip our toe and try things differently, but don't forget what has worked. Don't forget what we are grounded in, what we are rooted in. Don't forget where we come from. King of Pentacles underneath. There is a real suggestion here to be very present with our actions. To recognize where they're not ours as well. There are actions, but where they may be based on behaviors before us. And whether or not we want to take that forward. Self-governance. A week of self-governance. Okay. Energies this week and how to best navigate them. We do have the Ace of Pentacles at the bottom. Now, the pentacle that she's holding is rising. Okay, it is rising from her hands. Normally, the Ace of Pentacles comes from the clouds. It comes from the sky. It's like this beginning that we have to remain open to, that is somehow outside of us. While she has clouds, what looks like clouds around her hands are coming from the earth up. They're coming from human hands from the earth up. So the more grounded we can be in our body. Look, again, Chiron in Taurus, this is about the physical body. The magician The magician year was never not going to be about the physical body, the hollow bone, the torus, the as above so below, as within so without, the tube that we all are, the conduit. It was never not going to involve the human body. The second part of the year is a real invitation to balance that out. Really, really balance that out. Any machine that is finely tuned, that is cared for, that receives what it needs in order to function at its most highest optimum condition, will do just that. The human body is no different. So if you are finding toxic thoughts going around in your mind, look at what you're eating, look at what you're drinking, the basics, look at how often you're getting outside, look at the environments you're finding yourself in. I respect and appreciate not everyone can have that choice, but if you can and where you can, make that choice. There's a very fine line between duty and exploitation for all involved. Okay, severing that, having the courage to stand by any oaths that you have made, whether that's in marriage or family or work, contracts, soul contracts. Stand by the oaths that were made. And if you are unable to do that, take yourself away from that environment until the body is capable of doing that. Because the Ace of Pentacles here comes from the earth up. Our actions, what we do with our own hands, based on what we're feeling, based on what is going on with our body. Anything else on that? Well, there are roses and lilies and beauty surrounding this. Yeah. Patterns and cycles can be exhausting for all involved. Sometimes it just takes that one person to say, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm going to try something different. Or I'm not feeding this fire. I'm just not doing this. Hey, that might have to happen over and over and over, but it's a start, and the Ace of Pentacles is a start. So it's coming back to realizing the bigger vision. The Ten of Pentacles has to start with the Ace of Pentacles. The bigger vision has to start with the small in the moment moments. One of the biggest regrets we have is that we don't spend enough time. There's been so many studies on deathbeds done by people that didn't spend enough time with those that they loved, or doing what they loved, or, you know, living their life. So live it in the moment. One of the biggest regrets is that we don't have time. Make space for time. Whatever you need to be present. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, overall. Okay. The deck that I'm using is called the Unfolding Path Tarot by Athene Noctua. I hope I've said her name right. I hope I've called her for what she is, right and correct and just and true. Have we? Have we called the feminine, ourselves, the women in our lives, the creations, the voice of intuition, correct and true in our actions? There are no major arcanas this week, and that feels like an invitation to slow down, to really look at our own individual responsibility and what is happening. It's not, it does feel like a dark night of the soul type energy, only in that we can feel as if there are no major insights, no major breakthroughs, no major changes. We can feel as if we are alone in that. One of the guidances that I received through many a dark night of the soul, when I felt like I'd been left, it wasn't that I'd been left, it was that I was no longer separate from what I was seeking. This week, if there are moments where you feel as if nothing is shifting, nothing is changing, ask yourself, what does that look like? What are you expecting from these transformations? Go back to, do they need to be big to be relevant? Small steps this week. Overall, the energy is the energy of the Nine of Cups. The energy of being in this beautiful, beautiful card. She is expansive. She is open to life, all of life. And yes, all of life. I'm not a firm believer anymore, and I add the anymore because I was, that life has to be difficult in order to appreciate it. I do think we can pick and choose the bits that we want to experience. But remember, in doing so, when we do close ourselves down to certain things, we must be aware if we are restricting others in the process. I'm not going to get into the balance of light and dark, of night and day, because I think respectfully we've all moved beyond that, or at least the suggestion is that we do so. This is more about finding a middle ground and realizing what brings you joy, what helps you to open up, what helps you to be responsive to life, like that door, what helps you to be the threshold of the change that you're wanting, what helps you to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. I was having a conversation with my husband yesterday. I'm fully aware that everybody sees vulnerability differently. I'm fully aware that there is a plethora of suggestions of what vulnerability means, from people having to earn your vulnerability with Brené Brown to, you know, I think it was Brené Brown as well, it being the thing we want in everyone else but are less likely to show in ourselves. Figure out what vulnerability means to you this week. For me personally, holding back my love, regardless why or how I may do it, hurts me. That's a personal example. Figure out what that means to you and what you need in order to stand safe in that, proud in that. Yes, of course, we are leading into the Lion's Gate. I know it's not until July, but things are going to start shifting by the end of June. We have Jupiter in Leo, which I'm, fingers crossed, so excited about, being a Leo myself, but also having Jupiter in Leo. There's going to be a big expansion of the heart. There's going to be big expansion of light, and there's going to be a big expansion of the courage that it takes to be that way. Also, you don't have to be a Leo star sign to feel these things that are shifting, that are coming, that are asking us to stand in our worth. Why? Yeah, of course, next year is an 11 year. Next year is all about bringing that balance, that harmony, that justice, but also recognizing our divine essence as well. We need to be open for that. So find a way for you to feel safe enough to do so. Joy, laughter, beauty, freedom. In this card, this character actually has, you can't see it, actually has quite a few wrinkles on her face. Oh gosh, experience of life. Maturity doesn't mean that it has to be serious. Whatever age, we've had to be mature. I am one of 4, and my mother raised us all on her own, and I'm the eldest of 4, and there were times when yeah, I definitely played the mother to want to help my mother. I definitely played the mother. And now as an adult, there are times when I'm definitely avoiding adulting because I did it so much as a child. It's never too late to reclaim that childhood. Never too late to reclaim that childhood by being in the present moment. Bringing in the joy, bringing in the innocence, bringing in the laughter and the wonder of this life. So that's the energy overall. So we may not have any major fates overall, but we do have this essence of pure expansion throughout the week. On the Monday, we have the Knight of Swords. Things can be swift. They don't have to be what's the word? I can't think of the word. It's not sly. It's not manipulative. It's not treacherous. It's not showy. I want to say slanderous, but it isn't slanderous. So things can be swift. We can cut through this. Yeah, we don't have to keep repeating things that have outlived their purpose. But in his face, there's almost like a smirk. There's almost like an enjoyment of behaviors and ways of being that can cause discomfort to others. There are a lot of dynamics that are unraveling at the moment. I will share one close to my own heart. I have people in my life that if they're stressed, if I don't get stressed, they get uncomfortable. So I do this whole role play of getting stressed so they can then be not stressed and, you know, help me feel better. And even though I was okay in the beginning. So be aware of the dynamics. Be aware that some people, that's how they get love. That's how they know how to parent. That's how they know how to create, like my husband with his mental process. That's how they know how to create. That's how they know a lot of people will push themselves to rock bottom so they can rebuild again. And that is their prerogative. It may not make sense. It may seem harsh. It may seem, I'm going to say it, almost abusive actually to them and those around them. You don't have to get involved in it unless, of course, you're in a situation that you can't get out of. This is a different scenario here that I'm speaking about. You don't have to get involved in it. And it's okay to enjoy not being involved in it. That's the other thing, isn't it? A lot of times people will become quite narky if they've done something that was good for their own health. That isn't necessary. On the Monday, the changes can be swift. They can be clean. They can be clear. They can be rooted. They can be freeing. On the Tuesday, we then have the Six of Pentacles. So we do have that nostalgia. We do have that childlike energy here. But what we do have is the two hands. We have the Ace of Hands here coming up from the feminine. Yeah, at the bottom of the pack. And here it is the masculine that is offering up all these gifts. Our actions will be what changes the scenario. Our actions will be what shows how far we have come and the experiences that we have gained and what we are willing to share. As a result, it will come from our actions. The question here is, how willing are we on a feminine level, gender aside, to receive them? It would be very hard to receive something from people when they're, I don't know, not caring for themselves but caring just for you. That could be quite a codependent type relationship and very, very uncomfortable. It can be equally hard to be open to something if we don't quite trust where it's coming from. We're no different in that. What we give ourselves, does it have conditions? Do we believe in the change that we want for ourselves or in our relationships or in our work? How willing are we to be more open, like that door, to something different now? It's not about it being too late, because there is no such thing. You know, these things will carry on. If not, you know, whether it doesn't matter what you believe in after this life, the impact will continue down generations. The impact will continue in the earth that we leave behind. So there will always be an ongoing effect of what is occurring. So it isn't that it's too late. The question is whether or not you want to deal with it or hand it over to someone else. It's the baton. And there ain't no shame. This isn't a judgment. If you genuinely feel like you can't deal with something, that you've reached your point of no return, okay, then let it go. Let the world restore its own balance and harmony. Sometimes the more we try or interfere, the longer things take. I would love to change the relationship that my ancestors have with money. That would be my absolute dream. I'm doing my best, but there are so many ingrained beliefs in me that it may not be just me that changes it. My son has the most incredible attitude towards money and is so different from me and has changed so much. As a result, of course, there's been an impact of my journey and my mother's journey and her mother's journey down the line. But my son has took that baton and he's changing the direction. Sometimes it's okay to let go of the reins a little bit. Let the movement of what you're trying to transform carry you for a while. But then what would we do with ourselves, right? Because on the Wednesday we have the Four of Cups. On the Wednesday there's a real stubbornness of, well, I'm not needed then. And I can actually see that. Well, I'm no longer needed. Not in that situation. Not if it's not becoming beneficial to all involved. Absolutely not. The amount of times I have encouraged people to leave a delivery room that are actually in the way, that are actually slowing down the progress with the mother's consent and asking, obviously, but that are actually not beneficial to the situation. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is say, I'm not making this any better. I need to get out of here for a minute. I cannot hold space for this because I cannot hold space for myself. That's responsibility. That's adulting. Yeah, when we feel as if we need to do everything for everybody, that's a very unrealistic childlike expectation, actually. On the Wednesday, the Four of Cups is, well, what do I do now? Well, now, classic, with the Four of Cups, we wait and see what's being offered. We open our arms rather than crossing them over. We look towards what potentially could come in as a result. On the Thursday, we have the Page of Wands. We have this spark of magic, but it's a very sensual magic. It's a very relaxed magic here. It's a very, I mean, we have masculine, feminine. Yeah, pretty much throughout the week. So we're having that balance be restored. And on the Thursday, it's a very feminine, sensual, relaxed, curious magic. Yes, the feminine can be curious. We often associate, and again, this is beyond gender, we often associate the masculine as more free roaming, you know, as get out there and travel and explore, the hunters of life. But in most animal species, it's actually the feminine that is the hunter. Allow our intuition to be curious. This morning's guidance, I had several messages and they were very samey. Now, that's not to say that they weren't true, but we can ask more of our intuition, of our connection, of our spiritual guidance, of our vision, of our soul, of ourselves. We can go, yeah, but why? I wonder, can you tell me? Explore. On the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, explore. Okay, so whatever is given to us on the Wednesday. On the Monday, cutting through some crap is necessary. On the Tuesday, looking at how open we are to receive that will take us forward. Particularly around wounds with childhood, particularly around wounds of nostalgia when we've been in certain situations before. What makes this one any different? On the Wednesday, okay, so we've stepped back. We're not going to get involved in that. What do we actually do then? How open are we to look at different scenarios, different potentials that could come in? On the Thursday, being curious with that in a very, it's not seductive. I mean, it could be seductive in a sexualized manner, but it's more of a making love with the world. Now, I'm not advocating that physically, but with whatever we're creating, looking at our relationship with that. Is there a give and take? Is there a, you know, a attraction? An attraction. What is attraction? We talk about the law of attraction, but what is being attracted within us with the things that we want to create? Because that's what happens. Whenever we create anything, it comes down through our body. We conceive with it, you know, we open ourselves up to receive it, and then we deliver something physical as a result. So what is being encouraged to be birthed from us now? How would that impact what it is you're trying to manifest? Play with it. On the Thursday, play with it. On the Friday, of course, that's going to bring forward some indecisions. We have the Seven of Cups. I have this, I have that. What about what's over there? It doesn't matter. They're all related. On the Friday, be mindful of being out of the moment. emotionally, when we have that freedom of choice, when we have all these options, we can get so confused and thinking we have to decide them all in one go. One step at a time. Feel into how you're feeling. Do your best with whatever your body is telling you it is capable of on the Friday. On the Saturday, there's victory. And I think on the Saturday, oh, interesting, okay. On the Saturday, I'm going to a voice activation workshop. There seems to be a lot about voice coming in, which is the Magi. You know, it's Mercury, so that is to be expected. But I'm going to a voice activation workshop Saturday and Sunday because there's a lot coming up about singing for me, which is totally out of my comfort zone. But in particular in regards to healing, using my voice in regards to healing. Recognizing that we all do. Recognizing that communication is our light language. It is the ability to form sound from our soul. Do it with some kudos. Do it with some respect. Do it with some pride. Yeah, that's that strength card. That's that Leo energy as well. Speak from the heart. And if you can't speak from the heart because the heart is closed down, then take a moment out. Damage control here is key, particularly all week, but as we lead into Saturday, if we can be aware of the energy, the frequency behind our voice, it's going to change the game. This is where the victory comes in, because we do have the Six of Wands, and this card, I love this deck because it's very inclusive. All different relationships, all different scenarios, all different styles, shapes, colours, creeds of individuals, including those that are less able. So this man is in a chair. But the victory here is not that he is getting up and walking. He's not ignoring what he is able to do or not do. He is victorious in the situation that he finds himself in. And on the Saturday, that is the invitation to recognize that our expectation on somebody or something can almost make them feel less able of a person in their own eyes, in the reflection of yours. There are things that people either cannot or do not want to do, and that is their prerogative. When we continually expect that of them, even when it's coming from a beautiful place, or ensure that it's coming from a beautiful place, that can be really debilitating. We can feel a failure, as if we're not meeting, as if they're not meeting those expectations. Whether that's a love union, parents, animals, the earth, our jobs, that can really instill this feeling of having to keep doing more, not being enough. And that's actually what's rising, this collective physical wound of worth. On the Sunday, we then have the Two of Cups. This is seen obviously as, in this card, two women, but it's more the feminine, it's more the matriarch, it's more our emotions, how connected we are, our intuition, how connected we are, the Earth Mother, how connected we are. Can you imagine if we saw ourselves and each other through the eyes of the Great Mother? How would that change things? How united could we be with ourselves and with each other as a result? Okay, and that is the gift. That is the pentacle that is rising up this week. That is the gift that is coming up from the earth, from the feminine herself. The opportunity, the invitation, the physical beginning that can be born as a result of just stepping back and seeing things from a more united, heart expansive Jupiter and Leo, because the Six of Wands is Jupiter and Leo, Jupiter and Leo type energy. So let's have a look briefly at what we do have here. We have 1, 2, 1, 1, 3. Sounds like a code. 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 2. That's a cup as well. So the biggest energy this week, even though we're in Gemini, and I'm finding that I'm traveling with the swords at the moment, and it's very watery for me, actually, because, you know, our mind is like the air in the ocean, right? Our mind is like the wind. The swords in the tarot being our mind is like the wind in the sea. When our mind is really going, those waves they come, yeah, just like our emotions. When our mind is really unsettled, our emotions can be equally unsettled. So of course, working with the swords, I'm being shown where my mindset is having an emotional effect on my physical body. Okay, and that's one of the invitations this week. But the energy that does in Gemini season guide us for the next 7 days ahead is the energy of the cups. We have 4. The stability does come from our emotions. No matter how we may feel about them, they are an invitation to look at what's going on inside. They're an invitation to decide whether or not to keep that door open, or whether we feel too vulnerable, and that's an individual thing, and we need to just close it off for a little while and get some space. They are a security blanket, I hear, as well. For some, they can be very restrictive, in that we only get so far with our feelings and it's too much and we just pull back in. Again, individual, it's up to the individual, but be aware of that, because we have the 9 of Cups, 4, 7 and 2. When we open our heart, yeah, we are going to see that there is more out there emotionally, in our relationships, in our work, in ourself. That is going to demand different actions from us. The question is, what do we do when these indecisions come up, when this conflict almost comes up between how we feel and what we're doing about it? Because it's there. How united can we be? Can we take this opportunity, even if it may not feel like it, and really connect to it and create something different as a result? Not different because what it was isn't good enough, but evolved. At the end of the day, whether you are into this or not, most of us are put into situations to co-collaborate something else. Okay, and if you don't feel that, then there's that Knight of Swords. Yeah, if you don't feel that, then walk away from it. It is difficult because the red tie here, it is the whole soul contract. It is the whole what we've been rooted in our root chakra. It is the bloodline. Yeah, so being aware of that as well. It is the I remember reading once about soulmates, how there's a red cord that connects them. It is this unknown connection here. However, in this card, his tie is loose. That tie is loose. Yeah. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to add anything else to that, because that will be my personal opinion. So be aware of that. Be aware of your own personal opinion in a situation, and perhaps where that needs to be cut and removed from it, in order to be able to be honest with any judgments and expectations that are arising. So we have one sword card, and that's the Knight of Swords. It is not an immature energy, adolescent energy of the mind. It's got a real yuppie feel to it, so like the 80s type energy to it. The idealistic, idealistic attitude towards a situation. That's beautiful, but there's a big difference between idealism and hope. There's a big difference between reality and expectation. It's that double-edged sword. Okay, so walking the middle line between them. We then have 2 pentacle cards, the Ace of Pentacles and the Six of Pentacles. That new beginning, that new physical beginning, is going to come from physical balance. Is going to come from saying, I can't do this, or I can do this, or could you help me? And yes, I would like to receive your help. It's going to come from the nostalgia of remembering why you're in a situation in the first place. That is also then going to bring up wounds about that situation, because the heart is open enough to be able to allow that to move through you for the gift that it is, to be transformed through the heart space. Yes, thank you. Recognize that the heart is the space of transformation. This is not something that we don't know. We talk about Christ consciousness. We talk about unconditional love. How many of us are practicing it? It is a muscle. It takes practice, and how many of us are deciding to walk away when we can't. That's the key here. This, if you're feeling unable to practice that in a situation, okay, take some space. Take some space, because what's happening is, from a closed off heart, a closed off heart reflection is being returned. That's not going to work. We cannot talk to people when they are in trauma. We cannot talk to people when we are in the midst of something. Wait. Wait until the nervous system has settled. Wait for things to integrate first. See that for the gift that it is. The physical beginning that it is. You know, a balanced nervous system isn't woohoo. You know, the more balanced we can have our nervous system, that doesn't mean that we are calm or that we're only ever in calm situations. That's not a balanced, trained nervous system. That's avoidance, right? And a placated nervous system isn't a balanced nervous system. A balanced nervous system is the ability to be in fight or flight, which may very well be necessary for survival, and then be able to return to a normal state when we're in a normal state. One way to tell, I've been doing this Yochi course, which is amazing. One way to tell is how strong your vagal nerve is to see how long you can hum for. I don't mean that the tone will change. I mean a steady hum. So that type of tone. Practice it for as long as you can. That will really help you to tone your vagal nerve. The longer you can do that, it's like the checking your pulse after you've run. The longer you can do that dictates how quickly you can return from fight or flight to a settled nervous system. It is time that we see a settled nervous system as the norm. And many of us are trying to undo programming and patterns that have evolved us as a species. We want the drama. We get bored. We want the breaths on TV that are just, now of course they happen, but so do normal breaths. We want the fight without the ease and grace. The truth is, the ease and grace is our norm. The truth is, the delivery without complications is a normal birth. The truth is, the acceptance of how things are, obviously, you know, stating the obvious, I hope here, in a safe environment, you know, all those kind of things, is the norm. The truth is, love is the norm. But how willing are we to be open to that? How willing are we to change the narrative with that? We then have the Page of Wands and the Six of Wands. Can we be curious about what victory would actually look like? Can we be expansive in our heart and our benevolence like the planet Jupiter? Can we recognize that everything we touch becomes bigger? Now that's going to not go down very well. But, you know, if we are in a place where we're angry, can we really be surprised if those around us get angry? If we're in a place of love, can we be open to the fact that that is going to open up other people's hearts as well? And even that may have a reaction. What is victory? What does the ideal outcome look like? Moreover, who are you then within it? Take care, and I'll see you next week.